Alright, on this picture, on 82, we're given a cone, so I kind of drew a cone here. It tells us to round if we need to round. It tells you to shoot 3.14, and we are searching for the surface area. So first thing first, my height is 17, so that's really from this distance there to there, and that's, so I'm going to draw a little arrow so we can see a little better, 17. And then my radius is 13, so I got a little radius here. I'm going to put 13. Alright, our formula for surface area of a cone is pi RL, and that is all the lateral area, and then the base of the circle is pi r squared, which you already know. Remember, our radius we already know is 13, so we can plug in the r twice. The question is, where do we get this L? How do I get this L? Well, we have a right triangle there, so I can do 13 squared plus 17 squared equals that slanted height squared. So I got 13 squared plus 17 squared equals that L. So I found that L was 21.4, and then just took that and plugged it back into my formula. Once I plug all that in, multiply and add it all out, I end up getting D. Alright, moving on to 83. Finding the surface area of this picture. I just simply broke down each step. Where did I go from here? Let's talk about my two triangles first. We said a 6 by 8, and how did I get that 8? If this is 10, I have that triangle here. Move this out of the way. It's got this triangle, and if I got 6 squared, so I got a right triangle, obviously, Pythagorean theorem. 10 squared, or I got 6 squared plus this mystery angle, we ended up finding out is 8 plus, so 6 squared plus x squared equals 10 squared. Ended up multiplying 6 times 8 and then taking half of it, and since it's two triangles, I really can just leave it. I could divide it by 2 and then add it again if I wanted to, or I could just leave it 6 by 8. So there's the front and the back triangles. If we want to look at, let's say, the 6 by 5, ends up being this back one here, 6 by 5. If I look at the bottom, a 10 by 5. So we got a 6 by 5, that's there, a 10 by 5, and that 8 by 5 is the last one. That's this triangle here. And I know green's a little hard to see, but just gotta kind of use your imagination. It's this top right figure here. So after I add all those together, remember we're finding surface area, I got 168. Remember, surface area of a prism is just taking the area of each flat surface and adding it all together. Alright, number 84, find the surface area of this. I broke down each step. First I did a 6 by 6 times 13. So let's see, 6 times 13, that's this bottom, I guess this small plate here. Let's get another one. I did a 7 by 13, and that's this bottom, I guess you would say, plate here. Okay, so I did a 6 by 13 and a 7 by 13, multiplied those out. Next thing I did right here was find the area of these two trapezoids. This one and this one. Remember how to... imagine that's not there. Remember the trapezoid, how to find the area of a trapezoid. Just add the two bases together, 6 and 10. Divided by 2 and then multiply it by the height of 7. So I added 6 and 10, divided by 2, that's 8, times it times 7, and since there was 2 of them, I went ahead and multiplied it by 2 and got 112. My last two figures are another 8 by 13. That ends up being, let's see, 8 by 13. Oh, the top. That's right. So we got 8 by 13 here, and a 13 by 10, which is that back one. The back one in red, a 13 by 10 is this back figure, and that ends up being all our sides. Once I got all those, I added them together and got 515. Notice here I rounded a little bit. Theirs ain't no one other near 515. Ends up being 516.3. Determine whether each statement is true or false. If false, give a counter example. A radius of all radii of the same sphere are congruent. That ends up being true. If we're talking about a sphere, here's the sphere, all the radii, it doesn't matter where you go, it's still always going to be 6. So from that point to any edge of the circle, it's going to be 6, as long as you're in the center. And if you weren't from the center, you wouldn't be able to call it a radii. So that ends up being great. Number 86. Let's see if we can move it up some. Alright, 86. Find the surface area of a sphere. No problem. Our surface area of a sphere is 4 times pi times r squared. We know what r is. Obviously, if that whole thing is 6, half of it is 3. So I plugged in 3. We know pi, it tells us substitute 3.14 and then multiply it by 4 because it's in our formula. Multiply that out and I get 113. Alright, I got 87 starred. 87 actually took me a little while. I had the wrong formula, but I'll give you the right one so you won't have to worry. Find the surface area of a sphere. So we're talking about a sphere again with the circumference in the gray circle. That gray circle just means that circle they have labeled here that's in the exact middle. So that's the only thing they're going to give us is that circumference of that middle circle. It says use 3.14 and it says round to the nearest tenth. So let's break down that circumference first to find our radius. Remember to find the circumference is 2 pi r. Don't let that get confused with the area of a circle, pi r squared. So if I take out out of 43.96, if I take out the pi and I got 14, and then from that 14, remember it's 2 times the radius, so I divided that by 2, so my radius is really 7. So now it's just going back in this formula, this same one, this same formula here, and plugging in my 7, and I did that here. 4 times pi times 7 squared, and 7 squared is 49. That's why I went ahead and wrote 49, and we end up with that 615.4. All right. Moving on to 88. Question 88 here. Alright, I got a cone. It says find the volume of the cone. Volume, I ended up writing down the wrong formula here. Remember, that's surface area of the cone there. Volume of the cone's right here, 1/3 pi r squared times h. H is our height. R is our radius. We're told the whole thing is 24, so I know half of it's got to be 12. That's where I got that 12 there. And then now we're trying to find the height. So we have another right triangle. Back to the Pythagorean theorem. We got 12 squared plus h squared, because that's the height, equals to 37 squared. I did that there, worked it out, found out the height is 35. So I simply just plugged in 1/3 times pi times the radius of 12 times the height of 35, and I end up with 5,275.2.